Welcome to the Hiring and Empowering podcast. This podcast is dedicated to providing the key ingredients to transform your employees into a dream team that create consistent results in every aspect of your business, including, but not limited to, team empowerment, employee training, leadership, business development, communication, hiring, and yes, ultimately firing. As some of the country's leading staffing and management consultants, we help business owners and the team that support them to powerfully connect and work together to grow the business and a dream team. My name is Molly McGrath, and today's episode will be on how to get your employees to step up and make decisions, the decision-making model. In this episode, I'm really excited about. We've taught this presentation nationally across the country for many years. And it's often one of the greatest questions that we get from entrepreneurs, in particular attorneys, where they will call us and say, I feel like nobody has my back. Everybody, I'll be in conferences, I'll be in back-to-back meetings, and I come out of the conference room and there's a line out the door waiting for me with some of the most ridiculous questions that I feel that my team definitely could have answered, that I feel like they had every resource available at their fingertips, and I'm just stumped. I'm confused. I don't know why people are not making decisions, and the terminology that we hear so often is they're delegating back up. And often we start with a very simplistic but powerful question and say, well, have you given them the permission and the authority to make the decisions, or are your expectations that it's just their responsibility to be doing so? And typically there's a long pause that is typically in stereo of, well, I think I've given them permission, which really opens up this beautiful conversation that we have in regards to assumptions and just being really clear, concise, and in communication with your employees. So we always say, go back and start at the basics and have a conversation about your team. Now, don't go in there with a weapon, using it as a weapon and evidence of all the things that everybody delegated back up to this week, but really have a coaching and empowerment conversation and go back to basics and start with, we often talk about in our books and in our Team Empowerment Academy about your house rules, about your rules of engagement from First Among Equals, which is a phenomenal book if you haven't read it. And go back there and say, okay, guys, here's what didn't work about last week or last month, whatever. Ideally, you're not waiting much more than a week to handle these crucial conversations, and bring it to your weekly stakeholders meeting. And if you're following the agendas that we often lobby really hard for and that you can find on our website for free, we call it a weekly stakeholders meeting because every person in that meeting is showing up energetically, emotionally invested like a stakeholder, whether they own stock in the company or not. But their involvement and their ownership and their leadership within the firm is that of if it was their own. And so we always say, go back and reset the rules. Go back and reset the standards around communication and decision making. So today I'm going to share with you, and you'll find this tool below in the link at the bottom of the podcast, a very simple but powerful tool that Lainey and I have been using for many years to support, by and large, employees with driving the quote unquote job and role of making decisions. So the tool is called the decision-making model. And it's a tool to eliminate everybody in the firm being at the mercy of processing. Many attorneys, many paralegals, many people in a professional setting are highly analytical and find themselves stuck in this process called processing. And Colby calls it analysis paralysis. And many times we can feel like we're meeting, and that's why a lot of times people dread meetings, because we're meeting to rehash and reprocess what we talked about a month ago, or we've been talking about often sometimes people say for years, and we're still not taking action or making decision. And quite honestly, it's because we don't know when it's time to say we have more than enough information and it's time to abandon this project and take action. So the decision-making model tool is a tool to get you out of that gridlock of being at the mercy of processing while being faced with the decision to make a decision. And instead of spinning in a place of, I don't know how, we don't have enough information, is this the absolute certain best decision or way or strategy to go? The decision-making process creates a streamlining and really starts to begin to create the habit, get you out of the habit of processing and get you into the habit of taking action with certainty. So it's a process to decide and trust the risk and the reward. So let me say a little bit more about this because ideally, hopefully, you are a team member listening to this podcast today and you've already had that conversation with your entrepreneur. And if you haven't, please make a note to go back and have a conversation with your entrepreneur and say, listen, I see it happening all day long, and you may be the only employee in there. You might have several employees within your building, but I see, sense, feel, witness that people are delegating back up to you, or that we cannot move forward in the business because everything is hinging on your input, insight, approval, permission, whatever you call it. So I would like to come up with a process and start implementing some of these things that Hiring and Empowering have been preaching and teaching for so many years in regards to becoming an entrepreneur, being able to step up and lead and to have your back. And I would love for us to start trying this on. And you hear us use that term all the time, where it's not like the attorney is signing over their entire decisions within their business to you, but it's something that we're going to start playing with, and we're going to start evaluating and looking at each week and having, making those 2 millimeter shifts along the way of what worked and what didn't work about this. And we can always start with something small. I highly recommend. I always use the example of, I don't know why, but this is like the biggest bottleneck in businesses of office equipment. I use the example of buying a new printer. I can't tell you how many phone calls I get on a daily basis of people saying, I don't know how to have the conversation. We've talked about it 40 times that the printer jams up every time we try to print a trust, and then we have to take the toner out and shake it. And they go on this whole very visual story about just the inefficiency of a new printer or a copier or a new computer. People calling in saying it takes 15 minutes every morning for my computer to load up and then it shuts down every hour and reboots itself, and it's 20 something years old, whatever it might be. And we're always like, have you gone through the process of coming with the proposed solution? I know that you feel like you've told your attorney that in a drive-by conversation in between their back-to-back meetings, but I assure you they're not making a conscious choice to not give you a new computer, knowing that you're losing probably 2 hours a day of production. So let's shift this and let's come up from a place of empowerment. So there's really no right answer on how to handle making decisions. Everyone will give you advice and suggestions and the different rules, parameters, circumstances, and they'll be very different for different conversations, whether it's going in and asking for a new computer or going in and asking for a raise or making an approval on this brochure that this mailer's been sitting on my desk for a month. And the reason is because now the event's going to be, we're not going to have anyone in the event if you don't make a decision just to prove the color or the envelope or whatever it might be. And these are real life examples that we hear every day. But all you can do, and this is like rule number one of getting you into that flow of getting comfortable and practicing and trying on, is for you to ask questions to help you identify the answers and to give you the things to start processing to get you to a place of decision. So, rule number one is the power of questions. It's very simple, is just even naming the issue on hand, and ideally no more than 5-10 words, something you can describe in 2-3-5 minutes max, and giving the opportunity to be able to present it without all the story and the emotions. I think a lot of times that is what keeps us gridlocked and stuck and not taking action, because the stories, the emotion, the data, the history, all that comes with it tends to overwhelm and overload everyone, honestly, in the room. Sometimes you even confuse yourself if you're the presenter. And then we go on 7 different sidebar conversations when they're like, well, wait, what do you mean? What did you just say about Susie? And next thing you know, you walk out of there and you had your question was, can we buy a new printer? But then you find out that it went in this sidebar conversation that Susie's been late 5 times this month. So keep it very simple. Go in there with the facts without the emotion and this story. So step one is really to name that issue at hand. Clear, concise, just the headlines. Then from there, again, we're always talking about proposed solutions versus constant problems. Do some pre-work before, if you're involving other people, your boss, your supervisor, other coworkers, what have you, and you need to get some feedback from them. Outline the pros and the cons, and you'll see that here on the worksheet here. And spend no more than 15 minutes in here. Do not make it into a dissertation. Do not make it into an enormous project. Too often we spend way too much time thinking and processing. It's like rearranging chairs on the deck of the Titanic. It's you're not going for the lifeboat, if you will. So it's very important that you spend no more than 15 minutes on this, outlining the pros and the cons. Very age-old, simple strategy. Then number 3 is to give your time to percolate and process. So anchor to the details of the pros and cons. And again, no more than 1 week, and giving your some mental downtime where you can be navigating through your world. So if it's in regards to implementing a new program, I'll use the example of like an annual maintenance program, which is a membership-based program that you're going to be implementing in your business for residual income, what have you. And we're at the point right now of just outlining the brochure of the benefits, the features, the price, what's included, etc. That's a common project that we get many, many phone calls about, that people spend way too much time processing before they'll actually hit launch. So as you spend time navigating your week during what I like to call your mental downtime, just envision it. Just pay attention to when you're talking to clients. Just pay attention to when you're navigating your work and having this other piece that's added on to your process. It's going to be additional work. Start playing with the conversation as you're doing your initial phone calls, or after a client engages you and they start to go through your entire flow process. When you're spending some of your own personal mental downtime, driving in and out of the office, spending time walking or exercising or going to the courthouse or to the mailroom or to the post office, whatever you do throughout your day where you're not necessarily on point and on task and very much project or task driven, just spend time processing that. And then the next step is going to be, again, 1 week later, not much more than that. And I would highly recommend hardwiring this into your time template. 1 week later, go through this sifter that's on the exercise, where you're really going through the energy, the time, and the money output that you need currently to put through this process. So, what type of energy and people do we need to output for this? What are the time costs? What are the money costs? And by and large, those are the three main areas and the three main resources that you need to take into consideration when it comes time for making that decision. So, and when it comes time for the money, like what is the fee that we have to pay, but also what is the ROI on that? So it might cost us money. Many times people say, well, that costs, X, Y, and Z. We don't really have that capital available now, but the return on investment and what would be available for you to be able to generate $20,000 to be able to buy those printers, computers, whatever it is that you need, you have to really put that through the business decision-making model versus the emotional decision-making model, and put your business hat on for that. And so from those three resources, I really lobby hard that you don't start going in any deeper or any wider with that. So often people are like, we don't have a system for that. That's the number one thing that I hear all the time. And there are billion-dollar businesses out there that do not even still have systems today, and they're doing A-OK. And I say that because I love all the time that EO on Fire, and many of you probably listen to that podcast, that they always talk about when Johnny Lee Dumas interviewing people, like, talk to us about when you got started. And 10 out of 10 times people are talking about put the crappy version out first. They're always saying, don't spend time building all these systems and process, et cetera, because once you start getting things out there, you're really in it, and especially when it starts generating opportunities, money, and you're like, wow, this thing actually does have some legs and it's working. That's when you start to very much get excited, and then you start having dedicated growth time to be tweaking and refining and up-leveling and things of that nature. And then from that place, I really want you to be able to make the decision. Declare, write it down in pen, share it with everybody on the team, and then take it to a place of where you're putting it on your power projects. And it's part of your weekly stakeholders meeting. And it's already, it's something that has deadlines and next actions attached to it. And then you just really need to let go and retain the faith that you will prevail in the end, regardless of the outcome. So you just need to start interacting with this. Like, we're not going to go back and refine and retweak and leave it alone until you start having it as part of your weekly stakeholders meeting. You start looking at it when you're reviewing your 4 power projects that we talk about so often. And then from there, it will have the opportunity for the refinement, for the tweaking, for the revamping, et cetera, but not until it is in motion, because otherwise you're going to slip back into processing, and be at the mercy of processing. And you've heard me say it once, you've heard me say it a million times. A confused mind says no. So when you're going back to that proverbial drawing board, when you barely have time dedicated and carved out in your calendar, we hear this so often, is that we don't have time to get to all the things, the future, the growth, the opportunities. You're going to keep yourself stuck in that place of not moving forward. And we hear from attorneys and entrepreneurs all the time, when I have something fun that I'm working on, when I don't have anything that's not wrapped around ideation, activation, that's not maximizing, and I feel like I'm not playing into my future, is when you start to see it impacts your cash flow, it impacts your calendar, it impacts your opportunities, your phone starts to slow down. And that's when you feel like you cannot get to the place of consistency and flow and ease, because you don't make decisions on some of these future-based projects, and then they don't get into your world because you're making them so enormous and making them into something so much bigger. And it doesn't allow you to anchor to something bigger. And the vision of something bigger in your life will always give you that motivation and give you more gas in your tank to get out of bed every morning and press on, and not everybody feeling like they're white knuckling there every single day, because you already know that you have your safety net, if you will, that is always going to make certain that this well-oiled machine, or the conveyor belt that people talk about all the time, is not stopping. It's constantly moving. So this decision-making model is really for you to start playing with this and to be able to capture what you can, not only capture, but make it very, very simple about moving a particular issue idea forward. If you put pen to paper while it's fresh in your mind and you make a commitment. So we tell people often, put this on your agenda each week. Where do we need to make a decision? What do we need to run through a decision-making model? And here's a hint. They're typically on your strategic roadmaps or typically on your marketing plans. And these are, or they're sitting on somebody's yellow legal pad of ideas that we've talked about that we can never seem to get through. So whoever's responsible for managing all of that, I would highly recommend that you consolidate all that. Go to our website, get a copy of the 4 Power Projects, and put all those ideas in one consolidated area, and then bring that to your team. And right there will tell you exactly where you need to start making decisions. And if you're an entrepreneur or the attorney, and right now you're responsible for this, our hope is that you can listen to this and bring this conversation from a place of empowerment, from a place of permission, to give your team the freedom and the responsibility and the authority to begin making decisions and coming to with proposed solutions. So if you look at this tool, again, when we talked about step 1 is about 5 minutes, step 2 is about 15 minutes, step 3 is about 1 week, then step 4 is about another 15 minutes, and then step 5, this is no longer an enormous project. You are looking at getting something from a place of ideation to activation in less than 2 weeks. And that's really how you should be interacting with it. And if you're really stuck and you can't make a decision, then as a team leader, whether that be the business owner or that be the employee, our greatest recommendation is that you say, listen, we've talked about this, we ran it through the decision-making model. We're still stuck on it. We're making it way bigger than it needs to be. I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it on our year-end projects, or we're not going to talk about this or look at this for 6 months. And then we'll pick it back up and see what has shifted in our practice. And maybe it will be the time to resurrect it then. But don't keep it on your running list where you all have to look at it week in and week out in your marketing meetings, your stakeholder meetings. And then it's this sneaky little thing that is almost like evidence of where you are never getting anything off the ground, or we can't get to any future-based projects, when really, if you just took a few minutes to identify it and dissect it and look at it, you would really see that it's not a top priority for us right now. Actually, these other 2 or 3 things are. They're low-hanging fruit. There's money attached to them. There's opportunity. There's refinement. There's efficiency. Whatever it might be that's attached to it, this isn't important to us right now. So out of sight, out of mind. Get it somewhere in your CRM or on a project focuser or somewhere where it will remind you and will alert you when it comes time to do your quarterly planning retreats or whatever it might be, that, hey, we did want to look at this. We just weren't ready for it 6 months ago. Because as entrepreneurs, a lot of times we're so deathly afraid. The reason we want to rehash things and look at things every single week or any opportunity that we have is because we're secretly saying, we're afraid that we're going to forget about this. And please, somebody capture it and just remind us that we didn't want to touch this or see this now, but I need to know that it is going to pop its head up again when we said we needed to or wanted it to. So secretly, we're like, dear God, somebody please capture this, because I have 7,000 thoughts that are coming at me at any given day. And I just want to really have that confidence that somebody is going to put this somewhere, and that we are going to be reminded of it in a very automated, business-like way. So that is the decision-making model. And again, it just really felt like the time was right for this. We've been getting so many phone calls. We're at the halfway mark of the quote unquote new year, and people are starting to really look at, okay, how are we doing on our year-end projects? Around the end of May, beginning of June is where people start to get that oh crap moment where, at the halfway mark, like I said, and it's starting to already feel like that 2-minute sprint, like with that 2-minute warning where we need to amp it up. We need to up level it. We need to put our money where our mouth is. And now is the time as entrepreneurs to not go it alone. And now is the time as employees for you really, if many of you always tell us you're dying to be able to help your entrepreneur. You see where you can help. You see where they're drowning. So now is the time to have that power of the pause, to go back to basics, to conduct a stop restart, and to really start looking at the things that we've been pushing away, procrastinating on, where we're giving up on our future and our dreams because we're so inundated with the day-to-day grind, and make it simple. Keep it simple. And use this tool, and please let us know how you do with it. So again, the tool is listed below. You go to our blog, hiringandempowering.com. You will see so many we've been blogging since 2008. You will see many, many blogs on leadership, on project management, on growth, and on opportunities that will point to the various tools that we mentioned today. In regards to the Power Project tool, I also mentioned the decision-making model tool, and both those will be posted below for you.